If you care about the environment, you leave the car at home. That's a nice idea, but let's be honest, we're not going to give up cars, right? Right. So how about plan B then? Let's make cars more environmentally friendly. We already talked about the problems with the hydrogen economy in a previous video, the biggest problem being that it doesn't exist. But what about electric vehicles? Will those save us? That's what we'll talk about today. It's not your imagination, you've indeed seen this video before. As many of you have pointed out, several mistakes had crept into the first version. So this is the revised version. I'm making a lot of effort to prevent that kind of thing from happening, but it's really hard, and I appreciate your help and your patience. So here we go. Transportation is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. In the US and EU likewise, it accounts for about 29% of emissions. Globally, the contribution is 23%. Passenger cars and light-duty trucks account for more than half of that. The rest are big trucks, planes, boats, and Adam Tate. It's a big chunk of total emissions and the reason why much effort has recently gone into decarbonizing transport by switching to electric vehicles. There are 4 types of electric vehicles. The first are fully battery-driven. Those are the so-called battery electric vehicles. Then there are 2 types of hybrid cars which combine batteries with combustion engines. Some of them you can charge from an outlet. Those are the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Some will charge the battery from the combustion engine when the car runs, but can't charge from an outlet. These are the classical hybrid electric vehicles. They do, however, run on gasoline most of the time, so they're about as electric as a Big Mac is vegetarian just because there's a leaf of salad inside. Finally, there are fuel cell electric vehicles, which are those that run on hydrogen. If the thing runs on hydrogen, why is it electric? It's because you can't directly use the fuel cell to drive an engine. Getting energy out of hydrogen is a chemical reaction and it can't be turned up and down quickly. It's a little sluggish like Sabina without caffeine. So instead of using the hydrogen reaction to power the engine directly, the fuel cell charges the battery and the battery powers the motor. This is why hydrogen vehicles are also electric vehicles. By the way, that it's difficult to turn up and down chemical reactions quickly and efficiently is also why it's difficult to efficiently produce hydrogen from intermittent energies. The major problem with the transition to electric vehicles is that our entire transport infrastructure was built around fossil fuels, and changing infrastructure is costly and time-consuming. This is why I don't think we'll get far with hydrogen-powered cars. It's possible, all right, but building the infrastructure will take too long and cost too much money for that to make much sense. The situation is completely different with electric vehicles that charge from the grid because, as you might have heard, we do have electric grids already. This is why the transition to battery electric vehicles can be done much faster and at a lower cost. In fact, the transition is well on the way already. Globally, in 2022, about 14% of new passenger vehicles were electric vehicles, and the share had steeply increased compared to the previous year. Most electric cars are currently sold by BYD, followed by Tesla. It's worth mentioning, though, that there are huge differences between countries. For example, in Greece, about 1% of new cars are electric. In the US, it's about 7%, and in Norway, it's more than 50%. Keep in mind, though, that this is only new car sales, not used cars, which have a considerably larger market. A 2022 report by the International Energy Agency estimates that the share of electric vehicles in total new car sales needs to reach about 60% by 2030 to stay the course and reach net zero in 2050. So there's some way to go. That's why some countries are pushing policies to speed up the transition. The UK will stop the sales of new diesel and petrol fuel cars by 2030. The EU has banned the sale by 2035. Japan and China likewise say that by 2035 all new cars have to be electric. About 60 countries have put into place similar bans. The major exception is, guess who? The USA, which has no plans to ban anything, though the Biden administration has set itself a target of having 50% new vehicle sales electric by 2030, and a few US states, for example California, have announced their own bans. The main problem which slows the adoption of electric vehicles is currently finding charging places. Despite many countries' efforts, the deployment of charging stations is uneven, and especially in rural areas, it might be hard to find one. This, for example, is a map of charging stations in the EU. If you live in France but not in Paris, well, good luck. To make matters worse, a significant fraction of the existing charging stations are out of order at any given time. In the US, it was about 1 in 5 in 2022. In the UK, the numbers are similar, though they strongly depend on location. And then there are other reasons for why the car might not charge, such as problems with the connectors, issues with the mobile app you need for payment, or your husband who forgot to plug in the cable. Okay, not all is going smoothly, but that's birthing pain, you might say. It'll pass, and then we'll finally know what shapewear is really good for. And I guess that's right. The situation will likely improve in the coming years, but it does make the switch to electric unappealing for many potential buyers, and among owners, it's given rise to what's been dubbed range anxiety. You can charge your car at home, but the issue is that the time it takes to charge the battery depends on the power you can deliver to it, and the power depends both on the voltage and the ampere. The standard household voltage is 120 in North America and 240 in Europe. The maximum amperes are roughly the same, so in Europe you get more power out of the standard wall socket. I learned this the hard way when I moved back to Europe and blew up a few things I'd bought overseas, such as a set of external laptop speakers which went out with a loud poof and a little smoke. North American households also often have some 200 or 240 volt outlets, and in Europe we have some 400 volts outlets. Those both deliver more power and will therefore charge a car faster. In any case, electric vehicle chargers are classified on 3 levels. One is the stuff that you get out of the wall socket, that's alternating current and is called slow charging or level 1. Then there is alternating current but with higher amperes. Those are called fast chargers or level 2. And then there is rapid charging or level 3, which uses direct currents. Batteries all charge with direct currents, so if you use alternating currents, it has to be converted to direct current in your car. Just exactly how long it takes to fully charge a car depends on many things, but roughly the slow charger takes a day, the fast charger a few hours, and the rapid charger half an hour or so to get the battery up to 80%. They usually stop there because the last 20% take much longer. It's like it takes me 5 minutes to write an email, but then another hour to decide whether "thank you" is ever an appropriate closing. To overcome range anxiety, now all these charging places will have to increase dramatically in number. The International Council on Clean Transportation estimates that by 2030 there'll be 26 million electric vehicles on American streets. They'll need about 1.3 million slow chargers, 900,000 public fast chargers, and 180,000 rapid chargers. Since we already have too many numbers floating around anyway, let's do a little maths here. The rapid charging places can cost upward of $500,000. That's for 4 chargers plus the cost of building the place and connecting it to the grid, so roughly $125,000 per charger. We need 180,000 of those. That makes something like $20 billion. And this is only the rapid chargers. That's a lot of money, and especially in rural areas, it might be difficult to cover the costs with revenue from the charging place because there aren't enough customers. Indeed, a 2019 white paper found that a lot of DC fast charging stations become money sinks. This means that the market isn't going to do it on its own and will either need subsidies or regulations. It's a problem that often occurs with infrastructure investments in sparsely populated areas. We've seen this previously with telephone and internet coverage. Though in the long run, as prices for the technology drop, the market often picks up on it eventually. The Germans are testing an alternative charging method for electric vehicles, which is power lines above one lane of the highway that vehicles can latch onto by a movable arm on the roof. It's primarily intended for trucks, though. Then there is the question whether the electric grid will cope. The US Department of Energy estimates that about 80% of charging will be done at home and typically at night. But our current electric grids weren't built for such high demand, neither in the US nor in Europe. They simply don't have the capacity to support that many electric vehicles in addition to the electric appliances. If you pull too much power from the line in a residential area, either fuses or transformers will blow. An added problem is that the transformers heat up during use and are designed to cool during the night. But if you suddenly have a lot of demand during the night from charging all those vehicles, transformers can't cool down and are more likely to blow, especially in the summer when nights are warm and everyone's running air conditioning in addition. You could upgrade the transformers to ones that can support more power, but those are larger and heavier and may not fit into the boxes or onto the poles on which they sit now. In the US alone, there are about 180 million of those which would have to be replaced. Clearly, this isn't going to happen anytime soon. Instead, what's happening for now is that municipalities control how many chargers of what type can be added to each street. This is why in many countries you now have to apply for a permit for a car charger. And to avoid that too many of those run at the same time, many countries, including Germany and the UK, have passed laws that permit providers to interrupt power supply to certain lines temporarily. In the long run, upgrading the grid will be very costly. A 2019 analysis conducted by Boston Consulting Group found that in the US, depending on charging patterns, the need for investment in grid updates will be between $1.5 and about $5,000 per electric vehicle through 2030. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars. And this isn't half of it, because in the long run, all transmission lines must be upgraded to support electric vehicles, especially if the vehicles are also supposed to act as energy storage that can feed back into the grid. According to estimates from the non-profit organization American Action Network, by 2035, the costs for the entire upgrade in the US will reach approximately $2.5 trillion. Trillion, that's 1,000 billion. Other estimates have found between 2 and 3.5 trillion by 2050 for the upgrade of the power grid in the US alone. According to an estimate from Bloomberg, globally the cost might be as high as 21 trillion. Calling it a lot of money is like calling Elon Musk kinda wealthy. And it'll have to be done swiftly. By 2050, about 1 million miles of new transmission lines would be needed in the US. To put this number into perspective, in the decade from 2010 to 2020, the US added about 18,000 miles. So this means they'd have to get it done more than 20 times faster in the coming decades. Okay, so it's possible, but it's expensive. Does it at least make sense? I mean, the energy to run an electric vehicle still has to come from somewhere, because physics and all. Just because the vehicle itself doesn't burn fossil fuel doesn't mean it doesn't create carbon emissions. The production of electric vehicles has a larger carbon footprint, but it goes in favor of electric motors that they are more efficient than combustion engines. Still, eventually, how much carbon dioxide an electric vehicle produces per distance driven depends on what its energy was produced with. If the power grid is fed with, say, brown coal, that can actually produce more emissions for electric vehicles than for combustion engines. One way to look at it is to ask how far you have to drive an electric vehicle to save carbon emissions compared to new gasoline-powered ones. In the US, the break-even point has been estimated to lie between 50,000 and 20,000 miles. In Norway, which uses a lot of hydropower, the break-even point comes after just 8,400 miles. But in Poland and China, where a lot of energy comes from coal, an electric vehicle would need to be driven more than 78,000 miles to break even. As you see, how high the carbon footprint for electric vehicles is depends strongly on the energy mix at a given location. At the moment, various estimates say that the reduction is somewhere between 15% and 60% for various places in the EU and states in the US. The relevant part of the previous sentence is the phrase "at the moment", because as we power more vehicles with electricity, the demand for electric power will increase very quickly. This means we'll have to add power plants very quickly. The question is then what the power mix will look like in the future. Okay, so it seems like electric vehicles work and they do give us a decent chance to bring down carbon emissions. So why is it going so slowly? As we already saw above, one problem is that the grid isn't quite ready for it. Another issue is that fast chargers are expensive and not always worth the investment. It adds to this that repairing an electric vehicle is at the moment more expensive and takes longer than fixing one with a combustion engine. This is partly for reasons that can be improved on, such as the need for original equipment from the manufacturer, but partly it's for reasons that'll probably stay. For example, if your car has a crash and you must replace the battery, that's going to be more expensive than replacing a gasoline tank. Speaking of money, why are those batteries so expensive in the first place? It's because they require a lot of raw materials that are expensive, such as lithium, nickel, cobalt and manganese for the cathode or copper for the current collector. Altogether, electric vehicles use around 6 times more minerals than conventional vehicles. According to the report by the International Energy Agency, the demand for those minerals could grow by a factor 30 in the next 2 decades. The biggest problems are lithium and cobalt. In the past 25 years, global lithium production has increased by more than a factor 10, but that wasn't fast enough to keep up with demand. Consequently, the price of lithium has seen a wild increase. It broke in sharply in January this year, probably because that's when the Chinese government discontinued subsidies for electric vehicles, but it's almost certain to increase again, a trend that's been dubbed greenflation. The major problem with cobalt supply is that almost all of it comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has a long history of conflict, political upheaval and instability. In addition to this, mines there are often unsafe for workers and rely on child labor, all of which makes it an unappealing business partner. Luckily, it's possible to produce electric vehicle batteries without cobalt. There are several different ways to do this, and the first ones have been on the market since 2021. Ford, Tesla and several other companies are betting on lithium iron phosphate batteries that use neither cobalt nor nickel. They have somewhat lower energy density, which means the battery of the same weight won't get you as far as those with cobalt and nickel. However, they charge faster, last longer, and at the moment they're also cheaper. Still, for now, it looks like prices of batteries and with them the prices of electric vehicles will likely continue to increase. In fact, a few months ago, the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, told CNBC, "I don't think we should be confident in any other outcomes than an increase in prices." Scientists and engineers are trying to alleviate the problem by developing different batteries or recycling old ones, but unless a miracle happens, that isn't going to have much of an impact on the market in the coming decade. One of the upcoming changes is the introduction of sodium batteries. The research on those is quite advanced and several companies are already moving to mass production. Sodium batteries have some big advantages over lithium batteries. Notably, sodium is more abundant on Earth and easier to handle, which makes those batteries cheaper. However, sodium batteries also have a lower energy density, which means they can deliver less energy from the same weight. They also can't be recharged as often as lithium-ion batteries. This makes them unappealing for electric vehicles, and industry experts expect their major use to be for energy storage and short-range vehicles. But even if they're not used much for electric vehicles, they could reduce lithium demand, which would be an indirect benefit. Finally, there's the question, who is going to do all that? The automobile industry has noticed that the tide is turning. General Motors has announced that by 2035, they want to have 100% zero tailpipe emissions for new light-duty vehicles. And Audi plans to stop selling petrol-powered and diesel models by 2033. But electric vehicles are different from gasoline or diesel-powered ones in many regards. People will be needed for the entire supply chain, from mining to battery production to software development to maintenance and repair. At the same time, jobs will be lost in the sector working with combustion engines, as those vehicles will become increasingly rare. Exactly what this will do to the market is hard to say, but one relevant factor is that the motor of an electric vehicle has fewer parts, because the whole mechanical equipment dealing with the combustion isn't there. Because of this, it's plausible that in the long run the number of people working in the supply chain will decrease. Indeed, a 2021 analysis from the Boston Consulting Group of the European auto industry found that by 2030 about 930,000 existing jobs will disappear, but another 895,000 new jobs will be added. So it's not such a huge change. Though another analysis found that a total of 275,000 jobs will be lost in the car industry by 2040. So, well, never trust a market analyst. In summary, electric vehicles are well on the way to replace combustion engines, but it'll be neither cheap nor easy. Switching to electric vehicles only makes sense alongside a decarbonization of the power grid, while the switch itself will rapidly increase demand and thereby make the decarbonization more difficult. Electric grids will have to be overhauled substantially, and like with many infrastructure changes, it's unlikely that free market economies will take care of it without substantial subsidies. Still, I think it's the most realistic way to decarbonize transportation, and I believe in 100 years it'll turn out to have been worth the investment. Are you driving an electric vehicle already? I'd be interested to hear how your experience has been, so let us know in the comments. It can be hard to make sense of all the news about climate change. Everyone, it seems, wants to put their own spin on it, and it's difficult to find reliable sources. If you know this problem, I want to suggest you try out Ground News, who have been sponsoring this video. They'll really help you make sense of the media landscape. Ground News is a news platform that provides you with a lot of extra information that you don't find in the standard media. Let's take as an example the recent headlines about how July 3rd was the hottest day on record. Ground News will show you right away that this story's been covered dominantly by center and left-leaning sources. It also tells you which of those stories are of high factuality and which not, which is really super useful. And if you click here, you get a world map that shows you where this news has been covered. Ground News also has this cool feature which they call Blind Spot. It shows you news which has been covered almost exclusively by one side of the political spectrum and has been ignored by the other. Ground News works both on the web and comes with a phone app. It was founded in 2018 by a former NASA engineer, and I really think they're onto something. Use our link ground.news/Sabine so they'll know I sent you, and give it a try yourself. Until the end of July, you'll get 30% off on the Vantage plan. Ground News is an independent news platform on a mission to make the media landscape more transparent, which is something that I think we can all benefit from. So go and check this out. Thanks for watching. See you next week.